we admit everyone, um, that everyone's being admitted. There's no going back now. Right. So, welcome everybody. People are coming in, and I'm Ali Issa, by the way, with the Cooperative Economics Alliance. How's everybody doing in the room? Whoa, that is some energy. Thank you so much for maybe we're starting the momentum, right? So we ask how you're doing in 5 minutes. We'll get a little bit more enthusiasm. Also, we're gonna assign some interpretation as always. So just 1 second. Welcome everybody on the Zoom room as well, and we might just wait a few minutes because one of our speakers is on her way. We have people trickling in, of course, online and elsewhere. So just be patient. There was a suggestion to maybe share a little bit of background music through the Zoom, and I was going to ask maybe if Carlos and Yuko generously could do so because I'm so bad at that. Or I'm learning. I'm still learning how to Zoom 5 years in. Um, so sorry. So are y'all joined as? I don't know if. Okay. What? Uh, host us as it's part of our movement. But yeah, welcome everybody in person here in Hell's Kitchen, as well as on the Zoom. And we're going to be starting in a moment. But I believe because of our commitment to language justice, we're going to have an announcement about how interpretation will roll. Am I correct? Thank you so much for making that announcement then.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hola a todos. Buenas tardes. I will be making this announcement first in English and then in Spanish, and then we will activate the interpretation. So good evening. My name is Janice. I'm here with my colleague Hillary. We're part of Algarabia Language Cooperative, and we will be providing simultaneous interpretation for today's meeting and for the purpose of creating a bilingual space so that all folks can participate freely in the language they feel most comfortable in. So we will be interpreting simultaneously from English into Spanish and Spanish into English based on the language of the floor. So given that, we ask all folks to speak at a moderate pace and loudly and clearly, and preferably into the microphone so that we can hear everyone clearly, and of course one at a time so we don't have to choose for whom to interpret for. For those of us joining us in person with the devices, in order to access the interpretation, you slide the wheel on the left-hand side. I believe you slide it upwards, and once you see the red light on, it is on. We're doing channel B for English, so there will be a button on the slide that you can push up and down for B for English, and then it will be A for Spanish. And for folks joining us on Zoom, if you're accessing from your computer, you will see a globe icon in the bottom where you can choose your language there. And if you're accessing from a mobile phone, you can click on the three dots that say More, then Language Interpretation, select your language of choice, and then click on Done. If at any moment you are having trouble accessing the interpretation, if you're online, please write a message in the chat afterwards. And if you're in person, feel free to approach the interpreter that is not interpreting in the moment. Specifically for folks online, we do ask that everyone does pick a language who's not fully bilingual in English and Spanish, so that way if Spanish is spoken, you will be able to hear the interpretation. Thank you. Now I will make this announcement in Spanish. Hola a todos, buenas tardes, me llamo Janice, estoy aquí con mi colega Hillary, formamos parte de la cooperativa de idiomas Algarabia Language, estamos aquí proveyendo interpretación simultánea para fomentar un espacio bilingüe y permitir que todas las participantes puedan participar en su máxima forma. Dicho esto, le pedimos a todos que hablen de forma moderada, alto y claro para que podamos entenderles y no tener una a la vez, claro, para que nosotras no tengamos que elegir por quién interpretar. Si usted está uniéndose a la reunión virtualmente, usted puede y estás accediendo a través de una computadora, puedes hacer clic en el globo en la parte del fondo de su pantalla y luego elegir su idioma. Y si estás uniéndose a través de un teléfono móvil, puedes hacer clic en los tres puntos donde dice More, luego Language Interpretation o interpretación, y después su idioma y luego finalizado o done. Y si estás aquí presente en la reunión, en los equipos de interpretación, hay una ruedita al lado que puedes deslizar hacia arriba y cuando ves la luz roja encendida, el aparato está prendido y van a estar sintonizadas en el canal A. Si en algún momento necesitas ayuda con el equipo y estás aquí presente, puedes acercarte a la intérprete no interpretando en el momento. Y si estás en la reunión virtual por Zoom, puedes escribir un mensaje en el chat. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
¡Que vivan los intérpretes! Bueno, bienvenidos a todos y todas. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. Mi nombre es Chivi, y soy la coordinadora de eventos especiales de CEANYC. Estoy aquí junto con mis colegas Ali Isa y María Alex García. y estamos muy, muy contentos de estar ahora en el último evento de esta serie sobre la economía solidaria, donde vamos a hablar un poco de los jardines y la justicia alimentaria. Antes de empezar, queríamos dar un momentico para llegar y conectarnos. Entonces, queríamos pedirles que tomaran un segundo y se voltearan a mirar a un vecino, una vecina, de pronto alguien que no conozcan. Para las personas en el chat, pueden contestar estas preguntas en el chat. Queremos pedirles que nos compartan su nombre y qué es una cosa, qué es una manera en que han participado en la economía solidaria este último mes. Y cuando hablas de la diferencia de trabajar en lo que haces de forma solidaria, ya sea tu jardín, tu finca, tu cooperativa, cualquier forma que haces el trabajo de solidaridad, ¿cómo hablas de eso diferente de cómo hablas de otras cosas? Entonces, si quieren vamos a tomar un minuto para que se conecten con alguien aquí y para nuestras compas del Zoom también para que nos respondan.
Okay, can we go to slide number 6, please? Thank you. Actually, 5. Sorry. Yeah. Ok, aquí en Prime Produce la gente está conversando, comiéndose una empanada y en el Zoom esperamos que nos den algo al chat. Yo quisiera mandarles una empanada a domicilio, pero es un poco difícil. Entonces, vamos a disfrutar virtualmente. No vemos comentarios en el Zoom, en el chat. ¿Qué nos pueden contar? Cuéntenos. ¿Nadie?
Do you see things in the chat? Okay, dear friends in the chat, in Zoom, please share. We really want to hear from you. What is one way you have participated in the solidarity economy in the last month? How do you talk about the work you do in solidarity in a way that's different than when you talk about other things you do? And for the folks here, if you could maybe take 1 minute to finish out your thought. In the room, in IRL life, yes, Ali. Okay, and I'm inviting us to come back. I'm inviting this bubbly, energetic group that is fizzing up like a good kombucha. In this case, Chivi sounded remarkably like Ali, but you know. So I am very excited that the very slow to start conversation ended up bubbling in such a joyous way for me to witness. I was wondering if maybe one or two folks who are here with us in Prime Produce and one person who's gonna be super brave in Zoom could share one thing that you heard or that you shared.
So Nancy is part of a cooperative on 138th Street and Grand Concourse where they have a 2-acre farm, and the community participates in terms of growing. They have 8 hours that they have to contribute in terms of cultivating the farm, and they are moving over to more of a CSA model and more equitable models where people who cannot afford the CSA can still have access to the produce. So I thought that was really cool. And as someone who spent a lot of her youth in the South Bronx, it's good to see that spaces that once were desolate and unused are being used in a way that gives back to the community.
I was trying not to.
Always, if the spirit calls, answer that call.
Okay, so I had a conversation with Cecilia, and Cecilia, I'm sorry, I know you mentioned something about conflict practitioner. Okay, great. Anyways, so Cecilia shared that in one of the work that they've been doing as a conflict practitioner in a particular collective group is making sure that people have the various ways in which they either vote for something or abstain, right? Abstain from the vote, which I think reflects the way in which people are like sharing information. Like a lot of surveys or votes that folks might have shared, they're forced to give an answer, but what if they don't want to give an answer? So your result might be skewed, and you might not get the true population or representative the audience that you're trying to survey. So I think that's really cool. And I think a lot of folks need to like have a third option on their surveys so that so you could get like the best or true result that you're seeking from whoever that you're trying to gather information from. So I think that was pretty cool, and I'm going to be using that.
I'm gonna hold on to this one. Thank you so much for getting us started, and I am making a call to the people in the internet universe. Somebody raise your hand, share something with us. We want to know that you feel the love way over there. Is anybody raising their hand? You want to read some in the chat?
Ok, tenemos aquí al grupo que dice de Green Guerrillas, que dice que 2 de nuestras iniciativas son nuestra biblioteca de semillas y nuestra biblioteca para préstamo de herramientas que se abrió en los jardines comunitarios a través de la ciudad de Nueva York, y estoy disfrutando mucho las maneras en las que compartimos recursos entre nosotros para crear abundancia. Muchas gracias, Sara. Súper. Tenemos otro. Sí, Green Guerrillas está moviendo muchas semillas por ahí. Nos encanta. Sí, está magnífico. Y también tenemos otro mensajito que nos dice que The Green Light District, que creo que es mi hermanita Dani, que dice que en el grupito de apoyo mutuo estamos trabajando con granjas pequeñas y locales, y hemos estado hablando cómo podíamos trabajar directamente con las granjas para planear juntos lo que queremos crecer para las distribuciones de alimentos. Entonces, estamos en el lugar perfecto para hacer esto. Muchas gracias por compartir. Estamos entre amantes de la economía solidaria. Muy bien, muy bien. Qué felicidad.
Y pues con eso quiero también ser honesta que parte de mi rol hoy va a ser de mantenernos un poquito enfocadas y un poquito a rienda libre para poder hablar de lo que se nos venga, de lo que surja, de las cosas que han estado pensando. Este es un espacio de ustedes. Vamos a darle prioridad a hablar al comienzo a las organizaciones invitadas, y luego, ya que vayan empezando, podemos escuchar más del resto. Con eso solo puede que sea a veces un poco aburrida y mire el reloj y les diga, pasemos, pero la idea es fomentar un espacio compartido, cooperativo, algo así. Entonces, con eso se lo voy a pasar a María, solo para que sepan la estructura de hoy. Es que María va a darnos un poquito de contexto sobre esta serie y también sobre la justicia alimentaria y como el marco de referencia. Y luego tenemos 2 preguntas que vamos a hacer el punto de partida de discusión, y luego una breve reflexión de cierre. Una agenda muy sencilla con una riqueza increíble de mentes. Gracias por su brillantez.
Y pues sí, entonces vamos a la diapositiva número 7. Entonces, solo brevemente para contarles qué es CEANYC para las personas que no saben, pero estoy súper contenta de que estamos aquí con las personas de unos grupos magníficos que ya están haciendo un trabajo espectacular en conectar a las personas, los jardines, las cooperativas de alimentos, la agricultura de apoyo comunitario, y estamos aquí para elevar esas actividades y esas iniciativas y reflexionar qué significa que estamos aquí en una ciudad en la que una ciudad tan extractiva como Nueva York, que depende de la extracción de absolutamente todo lo que hacemos, extrae de la región en la que estamos ubicados, ¿no? Entonces, las zonas rurales, las zonas urbanas que tienen agua, que tienen luz, que tienen alimentos, nos ponen en una situación de extractivismo, y nuestro trabajo, y aquí les queremos hacer un reconocimiento a todos ustedes aquí por ser los que practican para interrumpir esa extracción. Entonces estamos súper, tenemos mucho honor de que nos acompañen hoy, y CEANYC es la alianza de economía cooperativa de la ciudad de Nueva York, en la que nosotros apoyamos todos los esfuerzos que son controlados por la comunidad para lograr fortalecer a las economías solidarias en la ciudad de Nueva York a todo nivel, ¿verdad? A nivel de tomar control comunitario sobre nuestra alimentación, la vivienda, el espacio público, los jardines, la tierra, el internet, la electricidad, la energía del sol, y todo. Queremos que la comunidad controle todo, y estamos seguros y convencidos de que nuestras comunidades sabemos cómo hacerlos, necesitamos del apoyo y lo podemos hacer juntos. Entonces, nuestra organización apoya a construir esa economía basada en valores de justicia racial y social, sostenibilidad ecológica, cooperación, mutualismo y democracia. Entonces, esos son los valores que nos enraizan y que estamos aquí hoy para recordarnos que ese es el marco que nos une, ¿no? Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Next slide, please. You go. Thank you. But in the meantime, so basically today we are here because we are talking about how the work that you all are doing connects gardens, right? CSAs, community supported agriculture, food co-ops, farms, and we want to see all of these efforts connected in a way that we see this as a regional economy, right? It's not only about the city, it's the connection between the city and the supply chain that brings all the food to us, to New York City. And so we want to think about how do we improve, how do we support, and what are the resources that we have. And CEANYC does research, and we do these kinds of gatherings to deepen our relationships. And it's already, here we're showing that we're already connected, so we hope to deepen those relationships. And also we are very active right now with matchmaking, like Cupido, you know, trying to connect people that might have affinity and that might be able to do collaborations across geographies, across sectors, and across relationships. So we hope to support, and since we have this sort of like a view that has been able to learn about the sectors of the solidarity economy, we want to develop these with you all to be able to make the connections, right? And you all have already your projects that are so advanced and ahead, and we're super grateful for that. And next slide, please. Okay, so just to remind us, we work with community development credit unions, which have a super important role in the work that you're all doing, right? Especially for CSAs, for food co-ops, and the ways that we decide to bank and to do finance in the solidarity economy is super, super key in the way that we interrupt the capitalist model of extraction and risk and predatory lending. So in the solidarity economy, we focus on uplifting community development credit unions, and we have a partnership that connects community gardens with the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union, for example. Every garden, even if they are not incorporated, can get an account with the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union. And I have really good news for you. I think the branch in the Bronx is opening in the next few months, so we are looking forward so much for because the banks have left the Bronx again, right? The banks have left the Bronx. So we want to serve, and I'm in the board of the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union, so we're super excited to be there and to be active. And very soon, we will have the satellite branch in the Bronx. Worker cooperatives are the other very active membership that we have, and also very interconnected with all the other sectors. We want worker cooperatives to join gardens, and so think about them as your members as well. For all your efforts, think about the worker cooperatives. We have the amazing Brooklyn Packers, that is a worker cooperative here that is also basically transforming the way that we get our food distributed in New York City. And so super excited to hear more about their work. Community gardens as the land, right? The land that the community has taken control over to not only plant flowers or do beautiful things, but also to work as a buffer for predatory development and speculative development in the areas where there are. And community gardens are just such a show of the force and the strength of community power in New York City, right? So all of our love to Green Guerrillas that works strengthening them. Then CSAs, which is, again, another incredible way of connecting networks, gardens, churches, communities, Just Food. Cheryl will share with us later their view of and how we're doing with that, right? And then we have community land trusts that lately have been making the moves, buying buildings in East New York. We're celebrating that East New York Community Land Trust has a building now. We will see how that is. We have the Western Queens Community Land Trust and Food Co-op also representing here to see what are the next steps. How do community land trusts that are community control look like? We still have that question, right? Because other efforts are still figuring it out. So just as a summary of what we are, how we see the connection between land, gardens, CSA is all interconnected. So just to bring us in this framework. Next slide, please. You can turn it a little bit if you're giving the, and then I'm gonna pass it to Ali, who's gonna show us, for those who haven't seen these, the density of cooperation, cooperatives, and solidarity economy in New York City is one of our efforts to do research and to provide ways of looking at how good work you're doing and also how much work more we have to do, because we need to do a lot more work. But here it is. No, just previous slide, and if you can open the map, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Maria. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Yeah? How's the energy in the room? In the Zoom? The room and the Zoom? So we're just going to be very brief because we want to get to our amazing featured speakers and their work that Maria described. But just to pause for a second, and actually if the slideshow can click on the slide, please, you'll see, not the next slide, but actually click on it itself. Then we'll go to our Seating Solidarity map, the map itself. Yeah, just click there, click it. You got it, you clicked it. Thank you, Hugo. So this just shows the density that Maria was describing, right? So we have a unique density of all these kinds of solidarity economy projects, gardens, housing, credit unions. And here we are. I mean, at the moment, if we just kind of scroll northwards, drag it, there you go. We're right now in Hell's Kitchen. Again, thank you, Prime Produce, for hosting us. You see that orange, for example, those are a bunch of housing cooperatives, right? Where we are. The green, of which there are hundreds, those are community gardens. The purple here is the Community Support Agriculture Project. So if you just click on that purple there, you see that this is Hell's Kitchen CSA, right? So Hell's Kitchen has its own Community Support Agriculture Project. It's part of the map that Just Food put out, and it's surrounded by housing cooperatives. So the point of the map is to show how these connections can become real, how there can be economic collaborations, and our CEANYC's purpose is to help facilitate that. So we'll touch on other densities. We mentioned the Bronx. We talked about so some gardens are on land trusts. We talked about 607 CSA as one that is doing outreach in particular neighborhoods where there's been bank redlining, racist extraction, and how food justice, gardens, and land justice can all interrelate. So I will stop because who wants to hear me talk? I mean, I don't want to hear me talk. Maria also does not. And now we'll go to our featured speakers. And just a little applause. I mean, come on. How's the energy in the room? How's that pizza? How's the empanadas? Okay, thank you, Zoom.
Okay, so let's go just briefly to slide number 16. So just to have us again looking at the specific solidarity economic principles that we promote, solidarity, equity, sustainability, and democracy are how we see these projects are viable and interconnected with each other, right? This is how we do this. And some of us have different ways of describing what we do, right? So that's part of how we name the solidarity economy. Some people call these the cooperative economy, the new economy, economic democracy, not democratic capitalism, for example, is not the same. That's not the same. It's a different thing, just to make sure. And then let's go to slide 18. So we work with this just to show a little graphic that this is all the areas where how we build the solidarity economy, right? We share responsibilities, we share risk, and I think these are the things that you all are doing with the projects that you promote and that you're working on. And it's not only projects, that we're building a movement in which we share responsibilities. We belong to organizations and form organizations. We work on our interpersonal relationships, and we change institutions and create new institutions. And we thrive when we are strengthening our skills and our talents. And that's why you're all here, because we want to skill share. And we love you so much, and you are part of our communities, and this is what drives us, right? We want to build other stronger communities that are living in the same neighborhoods or in the same state or in the same region, but building communities on autonomy and in ways that we can cooperate with each other to deepen our autonomy. So just with that in mind, I want to pass the mic to Chivi and remind us that community land in community hands, food justice and food sovereignty is what we're working for. And I had this picture of El Jardín del Paraíso in the Lower East Side because that is such a buffer of predatory development, and is just an example of how big gardens can be, how powerful politically community-run land is. And reminding us also that New York City, when you look at the map of New York City, the gardens are not recognized as such, right? They are listed as empty land, right? Always for sale, always vulnerable. And so us doing this kind of work is reminding us that the work that we are doing is usually invisible for the institutions. And what we want to do is to make that visible and strong. And so I give it up the mic to Chivi to continue.
Yay, thank you, Maria, for preaching the gospel of cooperativism.
And then just slide 20 to move.
And so really quickly now, we are gonna or actually at a manageable speed, we are gonna be moving to our speakers, our wonderful guests. We invited so many people because often people say they can't make it, and we are so very lucky that we had such an abundance. So thank you all. I'm gonna just name the groups that are here. We have Just Food, we have the 607 CSA, we have the Brooklyn Queens Land Trust, we have Western Queens Food Co-op, we have Green Gorillas, Kelly Street Garden, All About Brownsville joining us online. We have Brooklyn Packers, La Finca del Sur, and 4th Street Co-op. And I think we might have somebody joining from Japan who is one of the major food co-ops called Seikatsu. So we'll see if there is a surprise appearance. So with that, what I'm gonna ask our guests is to just share a little bit about yourself, and if you could do it within the question. Shout out to the folks from Just Food and Cheryl who helped think through these questions. Um, how do the work no how do we work to get fresh, locally grown, affordable food to all New Yorkers, with a special focus on serving the underserved and supporting farmers who are working outside the factory farm system? What are the special challenges that we all face? So, take that to share the things that are like the things you're holding that you really want this group to help you think through. This is your space. And so, any of the orgs that want to get started, if the spirit moves you, go ahead, get us started. Who has the other mic? Maybe that can. Here. Oh. Any of the orgs.
Okay, gracias. Okay, so hi, again, I'm Nancy Ortiz Surun. I'm a core farmer and co-founder of La Finca del Sur South Bronx Farmers. We're a 15-year-old, not quite a cooperative, a community-led collective. We were founded by a core group of Black and Latina women and allies. And, we were founded at a time where there were actually no discernible sources of fresh local food in that area of the South Bronx, right? Mott Haven, Port Morris. My reason for becoming involved in La Finca was because I was raised about 15 blocks away. And I remember as a child, not encountering fresh, appealing looking fruits and vegetables. I mean, my mom and, all the families that I knew worked hard to sneak in whatever was available, to create more balanced diets for, the children in our community. Community gardening and farming were at the core of starting to, equalize the systems a little better in the South Bronx. And, they were partially founded because of cultural need, right? We were living in ruined, if you all remember the picture of Jimmy Carter standing on, a devastated pile of bricks, that was about 3 blocks away from where I grew up. So, those, early community leaders created these spaces, invited us to come in and, help develop them. And, my involvement all those years later was really in gratitude and in homage to people like my mother, people like, Chema, who created like a cultural garden that is now replicated in the Smithsonian. I mean, it's a source of pride, and it's not an obscure thing, and it's not an insular thing. In terms of the questions of how we make sure that there is equity in accessibility of food for all New Yorkers. So in our area of New York, in the South Bronx, and beyond, because we also have a lot of involvement from just across the bridge in Harlem, is to provide space. You can come into our garden and you can help us tend crops. And it's really a farm. We have bees, and people can learn about, how to grow crops, how to keep bees, how to, create foods for a farmer's market tasting. So we, have a diversity of programming, and we try to, really encompass as many people as possible at the level that they want to be involved. We work with different organizations community partners, churches, food pantries. We have a bi-monthly farmers market, and a lot of times we don't sell everything. So that goes to local pantries or people in need, or even our farmers. Sometimes people forget that within our own groups there are people in need, and they may not express that need, but being part of that satellite in the community will give them access to. I think one of the major challenges of the work and making sure that everyone has access is capacity. So there has been a conversation about funding for community gardens. I think we live in a very stressed economy. We live in a very how should I say it? New York has viewed the work of community gardeners and groups that sort of are attracted to gardens as this free sort of labor. And you have to supplement. We're talking about circular economies, but if you want to draw in youth, right? Those youth, to be able to go on in life, need funds. You want them to have these experiences, but there has to be also that motivation. One of the things that we do at La Finca is when we have the funding, employ a part-time farm manager, usually a Black or Latina woman from the area. And so you gain that experience, you're able to keep the farm open because access is important too. Gardens, a lot of times there are complaints that gardens are closed. If you don't have someone to host the community, that becomes problematic. Also, the work itself suffers. So, by creating partnerships with organizations like Green Guerrillas, with other gardens, of course, Parks and Green Thumb, no institution is perfect, but I think that, pulling together all these resources and partnerships is one way that we can sort of better the chances that food will get to people in need, that the programming, that the education, that our mission is founded on, continues. So anyway, that was long.
Thank you. No, that was a great way to start.
Thank you.
And Nancy, I'm gonna ask you to just pass the mic to whoever you wanna hear from next, whatever of the orgs.
You know what? I think it's a short mic. So
Mira.
yeah, let's change.
Change the mic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna pass it to Yolanda because I think perfect.
So my name is Yolanda, or most people call me Yoli. I am a member owner of the 4th Street Food Co-op. I don't even know how long I've been a member. It has been over 15 years. Yeah, at least over 15 years. Before the pandemic, we were like pretty thriving. I would say we operate for a profit enough to keep the co-op going. We don't have any paid people who work in the co-op. Everyone is quote unquote a volunteer, and we switched that language to member owners because all working members have paid into the co-op. We even, about a few years ago, I want to say like 3 years ago, once you join the co-op with that fee, you don't pay a fee again. So it's just one fee, and it's like, I think it's, and then also we adopted a sliding scale to make it equitable for people, and it's prorated. So people can join for $25 if that's what they can contribute, and that membership is for the lifetime of the co-op. Whereas before the model was pay every year, but we thought it would make more sense in this building of a cooperative that wants to give back and creating that model. The challenge now is obviously increased costs. Luckily, our lease is on a block that was in a cooperative type model, even though they didn't call it that. It's on 4th Street. Unfortunately, in the last 3 years, they have switched over to the model that they have and now are running under HPD. Boo. HPD is problematic in its own right. But the challenge, housing, or housing and preservation. Yeah, but they're not preserving anything or developing anything, in my opinion. They just make it harder for people who need the actual support, and they need a complete revision. But that's for another day. The challenge is just increasing cost. And I would say the advantage is that we serve a community that doesn't necessarily have access to affordable good produce. Like there's a Wegmans that opened about 4 blocks away. There's a Whole Foods that's another 4 blocks away, but their prices are ridiculous. Where else in the city can you get in the prime of summer organic kale for less than $3? And it's not a bunch that's been, separated in half, and you're paying $3 for 4 leaves of kale or chard or whatever the case is maybe. And we have a great team of people who run the co-op. I would say 90% of the store is bulk. For me, that is equitable because you literally can come in and I just need 1 cup of flour, and you can buy 1 cup of flour versus being forced to buy 5 pounds of something that you don't need. And I think that is just the biggest thing now, is just making sure we have people coming in and buying and supporting the cooperative. Like I said, we're about 85% bulk, and we've been around for a while, and we would like to keep the doors open, but that requires people knowing about us, people coming in. We do things like recycled, people bring in their clean containers and they leave them for other people to use. People have been, we restarted the program where people bring in their, recycling their bags with us, so people don't have to bring reusable bags. So we're doing all the things that we can do, but traffic is just, we're in like the middle of the East Village. I know people in the East Village who didn't even know we existed, who lived there their whole lives and didn't know we were there. So it's just a matter of getting the word out and having more members and having more working members and just supporting us in some unorthodox ways. That doesn't necessarily have to be like working in the store, but it could be marketing. It can be all the things. And I just text someone and said, hey, can we like have a discount for people who are members of CEANYC? So we want to be able to give back and make things affordable. And then, yeah, that's about it.
Who you want to pass it to?
Oh. Oh, yeah.
I think the point that you touch on is something I've been like trying to formulate in my head. I think there needs to be education across the supply chain or value chain or whatever chain you want to call it. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, y'all. I'm like Shima Harris Widrago, and I'm the director of programs at Green Guerrillas. I've been doing urban ag since 14. I started with Green Guerrillas. So, and going back to marketing, I was also a market manager, my first real job, a market manager in East New York at an organization called East New York Farms, and also a farmer. So going back to marketing and education, I think that's needed because farmers are busy farming, tilling the land, trying to figure out how they could maximize their profit, and not really having that connection with their consumers because they're going through that middleman, right? And I think consumers, we're in a technology stage and we're trying to compete with Instacart, like DoorDash, like all these different apps. People want to get their food quick and fast. Like the American society is so like right there, quick and fast. And people no longer want to like leave their house to go and get the thing that they need, even though it might be within their neighborhoods. And I think the government too is like failing our system because we have all these incentive programs that are out there that are benefiting farmers and consumers, but there's no connection at all. And I think education is needed, and unfortunately agriculture or urban ag, whichever sector, is really behind when it comes to making sure that they're growing food for the people that need it the most. And I think farmers too, like there's a lot of white farmers in New York State. they need to change their mindset of what food is and what food looks like and who they're growing the food for. Because we know kale is a super crop, but not everybody wants kale. Like nobody knows what to do with kale, right? You gotta meet the people where they are. Like some people want Malabar spinach. Like you could grow that really easily and is a climate resistant crop. Some people want their cultural things. Like so how can you get that to them that a supermarket might not be able to have? And trying to think ahead of that and try to like beat the system before they start colonizing what people are growing at community gardens and farms. So I do think education is necessary. I do think that, and it's a lot of work and it's unfortunate because farmers are not making the income to like put into ads on TV or pop-ups on your phone. And that also plays into the reason why we're so far behind. And I think the more education that people have and the more willing people are to learn, like consumers going out there and actually learning, I think it create a better value chain system that we have going on and communication that we're going on. And I think farmers need to like go out there and also like meet the communities that their food are going to. During the pandemic, when we're doing food distribution, we will put like certain things in the bags, and people are literally like taking out what they want and leaving the rest on the ground. And we're like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, what's going on? Like, this is like valuable food that people are spending thousands of dollars on. And now that we're past the pandemic, there's no more emergency funding. And people are like, we still need funding. We still need funding. We know money is there, but it's how we're tapping into those resources. And I'm not sure how to get the two to connect, but I think there needs to be a system that connects the two. Yeah.
So there's a couple, I'll be very brief, and I'll try to condense it into 1 minute, 1 minute and 30 seconds. So yes, to the education part. I used to be a nutrition specialist at a program in Harlem, and I did cooking classes with grades 1 through 12. To combat the issue of the people putting it back, before we would distribute food or give them bucks to go get food, we did a cooking class with the parents. And because the kids were already doing cooking classes, so I invited parents, we did a class with all the produce, and then we would send them out into the market for them to like experiment, because it would inspire them to find different ways to use the things, to use the ingredients that were in front of them. A success story was a senior. His mom had gone out of the country to visit family, and he was home alone. I took him with me to the market. We went through the produce. We went to things that were unfamiliar to him. We got different squash. I gave him some health bucks. He used them, and he came back to me the next week and said, I made everything with all the things because you took the time, because I took the time to show him all the different vegetables and what he could make. And he got very creative, very fast. And for a young Black, boy in high school, I was like very excited and proud of him. Secondly, I'm moving more into the regenerative agricultural space. That's a whole nother conversation. The education that is going to be needed for that to be successful is dire and imminent because there is funding. Unfortunately, one of the programs I just saw, there is funding about, there's an organization, I think it's the Apache, I have to look up the name again, but they're basically providing certain Southern farmers $1,000 an acre to learn how to make their farms regenerative. If we can move some of that money up this way, one, it'll increase the quality of the food, because right now, despite all efforts and organic labels and stuff, the quality of our soil, therefore the quality of our food, is not good. This is called a spade a spade. We try to do the best we can, but we need improvements. So I hope to be the change in that space in terms of like getting more funding, especially for people who want to do organic, for people who want to make healthier produce, because they don't get the funding that some of these other farms get. I'll never forget, I was invited by the Soybean Association to go tour farms in Iowa. And out of all the farmers, only one was organic. All of them were growing food, crops to export. They had a deal with another country. They were growing soy, corn, all the things that were shipping from, and all of that food, instead of staying here, was going out. So I think there needs to be a better structure for farmers. There's a whole other thing. I'm trying to work on a farmers retreat for farmers, for them to connect and also have these conversations, because there need to be spaces where they're conversing, because they're busy toiling the land. And they don't have the mental capacity sometimes to do all the other things. I'm also on the community board for the green market. So I'm hearing a lot of this conversation and want to apply it to other things we're doing. I know I'm wrapping up.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure that we hear from this side of the room, and then also from folks who are with us via Zoom, our presenters. So wondering if anybody on this side would like to jump in. And yeah.
Hello. I'm Raina, worker owner of the Brooklyn Packers. Sorry, I haven't heard my own voice in a while. So yes, we do food distribution in Brooklyn and parts of Queens. And I primarily do the sourcing from our farms that we work with upstate and other places throughout the region. We currently just started a really big distribution project with United Way of New York City. We're distributing food to 23 food pantries through the New York Food for New York Families grant. And we have other grant funding to distribute more produce to more pantries, which is amazing. And we also work with a number of other nonprofits and mutual aid groups, community orgs, when they distribute food. So we source, pack, and deliver. And people hire us for all three of those things or some of those things. We run a farm share called Brooklyn Supported Agriculture, which is currently on pause while we revamp it, but we do also run a weekly farmers market from our space in Bed-Stuy. And that farmers market grew out of us having leftover produce from our farm share, and we would sell it basically at cost. And now it's pretty much the same, but now we just are running the market while we're reworking the farm share, but it's still a good way to be in the community. And we have a lot of regulars who come by. And one thing that I love is how a lot of times we're getting stuff directly from farms and either delivering it to people's homes, or they come pick it up, or delivering it to a pantry. And it's much fresher and lasts a lot longer than what you get at the grocery store. And I think one key way that we are able to do this is the funding that I mentioned. And other people have talked about this too. And sometimes when I do interviews with people or whatever, and they're like, what can we do to support Brooklyn Packers? What do you need? And the answer is money. And like, nobody likes to hear that or say it, but that's it. I feel that's like a huge factor. Like this year is the first year that we're going to be able to give money to farms up front to pay for a portion of what we're buying throughout the season, which I know helps them immensely. And it's because we are getting money up front to pay ourselves and to pay for things. And I am grateful that this funding exists. And a lot of it is specifically earmarked for what the USDA calls socially disadvantaged farmers, which is a very broad category, but we are focusing on Black farmers, brown farmers, queer farmers, women farmers. And we, have a pretty good network of folks upstate and working on getting transportation from there to the city. And like I said, the key factor in all of this is that we need money to do it. And I think another important part of this is that we've been able to work with other organizations to get the funding. And I think that's like another important thing is that we can work together. Like maybe your org is too small to apply for this funding, or maybe you don't have enough people, but if you know of a similar organization, or there's a parent group that is like wanting to do the same thing you are, you can combine forces and get funding that way. And it also means there's more people working on the project, there's more resources available. So I think that's an important part of the work as well, and how like, continuing to collaborate, especially when sometimes it feels like there's only one pot of money and everyone you know in the field is going for the same thing. We could all just go for it together. And I think there's a second question, but I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, but I can pass.
And Cheryl, that's actually a question in the chat specifically for you to share. I believe the question is if you could share how you provide stipends for community workers. Is that correct, Maria? Yes. So who's saying that? And okay, so we're gonna ask that, and then I know Rachel wanted to go, so we'll do kind of Cheryl and then Rachel.
Actually, I'm Cheryl, and I'm the board president of Just Food, and I'm also lead steward at Kelly Street Community Garden. But I wanted to pick up from what you said, because I thought it was very important, because it's something that I've always been saying about funding. And that a lot of the times, the types of organizations we have are too small to leverage the funding that is out there. And in order for us to leverage that pot of money, we need to find a way in which to collaborate to leverage that money. It's all well and good that the USDA has millions of dollars, but many of us will never be able to tap into it because we don't have the capacity to leverage that money. We don't have the organization behind us to write those complicated grants, 40 pages, and we don't have the capacity to do the follow-up in terms of the report. So the question is, it's all well and good we say we need to work together to leverage this money, but how are we going to do that if we are always having hands in the ground? We are stretched, we're overworked, and it's good that we're connected here today to get to know folks, but most of the time we're in silos and we're disconnected. The system of capitalism does not allow for collaboration. And I think we kid ourselves in thinking that we will work together within this system and we will work together to find a way in which to build collaboration. We have to really be serious about it. And we have to really be serious about it without beyond the sitting in circles and talking to each other. Some of the ways that we do it is that we really build partnerships. And we really value our partnerships. And it is very hard to do it on your own. We want to be able to connect to other people to be able to do it. The way that we raise money for stipends is that we constantly raise money and write grants. And we have folks who that is all they do. Because one of the things that we know in order for a community garden to be sustainable is that you have to pay people to do the work. Volunteerism is not sustainable. It is not fair to exploit people to work land for no money and then turn around and do food security work. Especially if we are working on land that we do not own. It's either owned by the Parks Department, it's either owned by a developer, or it's owned by some city agency. They get the big bucks, they have the deep pockets, they exploit our labor, and then they don't allow us a lot of the times to be able to raise the funding to pay for that labor. We have to find a way to talk about this, and we have to find a way to work together collaboratively so that we are a force. We are not a force, we are splintered, we are in silos. We are not a force enough to be able to come together and move the needle that says that community gardening is important, urban agriculture is important, and it is necessary for the development of our urban landscape so that we can attract the funding. We need to go beyond this. We, at Kelly Street Garden, we stipend 7 people, and they show up every single week. They show up because it's a job, and they need to get paid for the job. And they have been coming for years, and that's how we sustain the garden. You know, beyond that, the garden wouldn't be open the hours that it is open. We wouldn't be able to grow the amount of food that we grow, and we wouldn't be able to have the programming that we have. And that's just the bottom line. We have to find a way in which to collaborate more. And I talk about, we can't just say we're gonna work together to write a grant. We have to really mean it and really do it, and really strategically think about how we're gonna build that framework to execute that. Who is gonna be the person within our circle that has the expertise to write that grant? Who is gonna be the person in our circle that has the expertise to collect the data that will help us to write that grant? Who is the person who has the expertise that when the USDA or any other funding stream says that we have to give interim reports is gonna do that? That's how, and for me, in order for us to smash capitalism, you need to know it very, very well in order to be able to do it. You need to know how the USDA works. You need to know how all these funding stream works very, very well in order to be able to execute what you want to execute in order to change the system.
Wait, 1 second. So before we go on to second interventions, let's make sure we hear from folks. So don't forget your thought. No, wait, we can't hear without the mic for folks, but I really want to make sure we're hearing from all speakers. So just hold that back.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Yeah, I just want to, honor what you just said. And I think that in having these different people who have these areas of expertise, we have to find a way to transfer that knowledge. That is something that we have. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles. Cheryl knows, in the South Bronx, especially where we do this work on a totally grassroots basis. How do you make sure that this gets, transferred to future generations? And when we talk about economics and, our youth need, economic support, how do we do that? Just to make sure that people are being taught to do this. That should not be the domain of one person, but those experts, right, should be enabled also and empowered to transfer that. So that's what I want.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it to Rachel. Then I don't want to forget that Bernice is also with us on Zoom. So after Rachel, gonna pass it to Bernice, and then maybe we can come and close with this side of the room. Not close, just that first round.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, and I'm here with the Western Queens Food Co-op. I'm forgetting I was about to say another group, but so we are actually just in an organizing phase, and I know some people here know about food co-ops and how long it can take to actually open one. The Food Cooperative Institute, who kind of helps, they're in the Midwest, they help people start food co-ops. They say it takes 3 to 5 years, but actually recently on some of the webinars they've had in the last year or two, they've been talking about how it's been taking a lot of communities up to 10 years or 15 years to open a food co-op. And, when I started doing this organizing work, I was on the 3 to 5 years. So now I'm oh crap. I don't know if I have, so anyway, so one major challenge that I would say is obviously money, funding. This is, what everyone's saying. That's a big, big thing to get all of the money that will be needed to start the co-op. And we're actually trying, our dream is to start with a mobile co-op actually that can travel to different neighborhoods in Western Queens that don't have good access to fresh and affordable produce. And then, eventually have a brick and mortar store. So that's the vision right now. And we haven't done our bylaws yet. We're trying to do that like this year. So it's like we're trying to make this hard decision about, is it going to be just a consumer co-op, which is what most food co-ops are, or is it going to be a hybrid, like with a worker and consumer co-owned co-op? So we're figuring it out. But so another challenge is, I would say, is like capacity, because of the fact that it's literally, this is all volunteer work to try to start this co-op. And if it's going to take 10 years, like how many people have 10 years to volunteer whatever it is, 5 to 10 hours a week to like put in, like little by little, like what I've been doing over the last couple of years already is like, just doing outreach events and talking to people and trying to do social media and trying to write grants and trying to do a little bit of all the things that you have to do to start the co-op. It's like, what the hell? So yeah, and in that is like capacity, or in that capacity is also education, which you all talked on already too, because we're going out into communities in Western Queens and saying, yeah, we really want to start a food co-op, and people are like, what's that? Like, don't even know, haven't even heard of a food co-op, because there isn't one in Queens, as you may know. Like Brooklyn has a few, Manhattan has a few, but Queens doesn't even have one. What? Oh, only? Oh, okay, all right. Okay. So education has also become a part of our work, which, it's just another thing that you have to do. But like, we're trying to start a business. We're not trying to just be educators, but you have to do you have to do everything for free as a volunteer. Yeah, I don't know. I guess those are the main challenges I would just highlight to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm wondering if we can bring up Bernice to share about, it's all about Brownsville.
Hi. Thank you, Karan.
We're putting you on, what is
Okay.
it, Spotlight?
You needed a charger, you asked me for one. Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you great.
I'm sorry. Such great minds, such great information. I have a question. I am a lead steward for a Green Thumb community garden. But hearing everyone share, I can tell that my vision and my mission is so much more, probably more than what I could get done as a Green Thumb community garden, because my heart is really in the educating the community and making sure that people know how to grow food, how important it is to eat real food. And I live in Brownsville. I was born and raised in Brownsville and left as an adult, came back as a 12-year-old. And so now the garden is in Brownsville. And I do go all the way up to the 4th Street Co-op to purchase food, even though I sometimes shop at Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. I want to support my cohorts. I want to support, so much was said, the capitalism. This thing is so hard to leverage. What I would like to know is, as a beginning, this is just something I want to do. I need to, I guess I need to be mentored, or I need to have a needs and resources, or I need to connect with everyone here, to what everyone is saying here, because this is just a beginning. I just started out with a plot, growing food. And then I said, this is so important to the community. If I could only have a camera running where people could see how people look into the garden, now that I've gotten the garden going and cleaned up this corner, and people pass by and they're like looking. I know they know what food is, And people are sharing how they farm in the countries they come from. And I want to be a part of it all. I want to be a part of bringing food to the community. I have met some of you people. Yoli, I met, and she introduced me to the 4th Street co-op, the co-op in the East Village. Nancy, I've met Nancy, and Cheryl, I've heard your name just with one of your members. And I've seen so many of you guys. I want to be in the middle of the herd. I need to learn and then need to connect. I think it's really important that I get a contact list, because my mission, my purpose is I want to show people how to grow food. We need to grow food on our windowsills, on our terraces, wherever there's light and we can provide water. People need to learn how to grow food, because there's nobody trying to bring real food to our communities. And people do not know how to make that connection, as someone was saying. People don't know how simple it is. And I want to support farmers. So that's something I want to learn to do. I want to learn how to make these connections. So I'm putting that out there. I don't think I have much to offer here today, except for the fact that I am here, I am willing, and I am able. So, thank you.
Bernice, honestly, just hearing you speak, I got a little goosebumps. So don't, you offered so much in how and what you shared. And with that, I really wanted to also, Maria had asked me or brought up that we should also share a little bit about the supply chain and the scale of it. And we wanted to particularly ask Tiana to frame that a little bit. And so I'm gonna pass it off to you next to continue with that, if you could please. Of course, no pressure to talk about that.
That's a big thing to talk about. I'll take a stab, just like our little regional one at any rate, which the Brooklyn Packers and Cheryl and a lot of us participate in. I am Tiana Kennedy. I have been farming since 2010. I've lived in the city for a decade before that and was a poor, broken person that really relied on the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union for help. So very grateful for that connection here tonight. But I then was a poor farmer. Someone mentioned housing at some point. Housing is horrible for people in the city and poor farmers, especially as Airbnb hits. And I'm, moved. Yeah, make it short. Okay. Slow. Okay. Forgive me. Anyway, I moved 23 times. I was a farm worker. I was displaced a number of times. I did a lot of things. Eventually started a farm in 2015 with landless, I did not have generational wealth. Partnered with another person that didn't have generational wealth. We leased some land, rented houses around until we've eventually landed in the Charlotte Valley. And it concurrently started a multi-farm CSA with the partners from the farming markets that I was participating in before that, to fund the project because we had no money. And so that slowly grew over time. In 2017, we had a farm worker come named Amanda Wong, who was just like stellar human being, grew a little bit more. When the pandemic hit, we exploded into an 800-person CSA, a 40-farm cooperative, and Amanda, our employee, took over my job at the farm because I was suddenly just working in logistics. And so since then, and then Amanda was tired of working with white people and started bringing up more of her community. So now it's a pretty safe space for queer POC farmers. And Amanda also led us in mutual aid work. So we started fundraising and doing distributions in the city with the community groups. Obviously, food insecurity is not something that just happened with the pandemic, but it really underscored the already broken system. So we started collaborating with groups down here to try to figure out what mutual aid really meant, not just food, emergency food relief. And then because we started aggregating in this crazy scale, I got very ambitious and was like, well, what if we start doing wholesale and farm to institution work? And while we're at it, why don't we do a big land project, because there will be no farmers in the next 30 years if we don't start training farmers. So we are now working with a 300-acre incubator farm. We're turning it into a community land trust about an hour south of where we are. And there's a couple of farmers from the Bronx that are there now. And that's becoming a thing. And so we're basically trying to steward a whole food sovereignty project with vertically integrated, so there is no middleman. We took on the role of the middleman. We became a nonprofit because we wanted the farmers. We work with a lot of small scale farms. We wanted them to get as much money as they could. We didn't want to extract from them. And so we're finding extra funding to help with the transportation. And then we're partnering with groups in the city. This year we're partnering with Cheryl, a bunch of other people. So not just doing our CSA, but working with other community CSAs to help contribute. We crop plan with the mutual aid groups that we work with to make sure that the food is grown for the people that want to eat the food that is grown. As it turns out, it's a lot of like onions and like beans and things that we're like, oh, okay, we could do that. At any rate, so that's so the supply chain right now is that we're working with a bunch of farms in the Catskills. We work with multiple third-party trucking companies. We have our own in-house truckers that do like our Catskills area, and then we have a woman-owned farm logistics company from Vermont that takes 10 pallets, actually 16 pallets a week from our zone down to the city. But then we work with another group that's a similar group. It's like a sister organization in the Adirondacks who takes farmers from their area, and then they do our last mile in the city so we can collaborate and be more efficient. And so all of their farms and all of our farms with the Essex Food Hub, works with us in the city. And now we're working with the Brooklyn Packers also to grab a couple of farms from the Hudson Valley on the way down through Troy Commons, which is a group that Amanda started to work with her, the Asian diaspora in the city. So it's a big, complicated, crazy thing that we're doing now. I think a lot of you talked about how farmers don't have time to do this. We're not actually a co-op because the farmers that we work with are like, we don't want that. Just tell us what to bring, and we just want you to do it. And but within our own group, we're trying to figure out how to. We're a new nonprofit, and we're those. I don't know if any of, but the nonprofit industrial complex is horrible. And once you become it, you're like, we're just money laundering. It's going to be fine. But then, no, you're a nonprofit and you have to live within that system. And and I'll give it back. So at any rate, so so that's a little bit to try to answer that. I just wanted to say two more things really quick. One is that, we were talking about the systems earlier about consolidation, extraction, scale, efficiency. The system isn't broken. It's working as it was intended to work. And so what we're trying to do is work within that and create a new system that prioritizes resilience, collaboration, coordination, replication, and strategic partnerships. We couldn't do this alone. We can't do this work alone. And but the difficulties are capacity. We're built on exploitative systems that don't honor labor. So it's really scary for us to usher in POC, trans, vulnerable communities as farmers into a system that is based on exploitation. So we really need to make sure that we figure out a way to honor farm labor, pay the farmers, and still have the food be affordable to the people that can't afford $4 bunches of kale. And then seasonality is rough. Climate is rough. It's really hard. It's like we're running a production Toyota factory without a roof, and it just is hellish. So it's a crazy thing we're all doing together. But it's really important, and I'm really honored to be part of this circle. I'm really honored to be working in this community, and that's what I have to say.
Yeah. You missed something that Ayeshima said. You ask us Your farmers ask us, what does your community want us to grow? And that is very important to us because most farmers, they don't do that. I actually get emails, what is it? What is your top priority? So we can serve our community and we can have culturally relevant food. Another thing is you have nonprofits, and we need to distinguish that. And all of us are not lumped into the nonprofit industrial complex. Some of us are small and struggling, and that's the only structure that there is for us to be able to do our work. So until we can find a better systems that that add to the cooperative model and all other models, some of us can only work in nonprofits. Just to say, IRC is a nonprofit industrial complex. You aren't.
I figure that's a good time to jump in on our behalf. Thank you, Cheryl, I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name is Dee Perry. My pronouns are she and they. I'm a new board member at the Brooklyn Queens Land Trust not here, out that way, just about. And I'm also the chair of our operations committee, which is not just the actual operation of the gardens, but also building and facilitating interdependence and independence with the gardens. I'm gonna wanna talk about land and the systems that don't serve us, because you've got my brain going tonight. You all do, really, thank you so much. The Brooklyn Queens Land Trust, in its name, is a land trust that owns the property underneath 35 gardens across Brooklyn and Queens. And we also lease 2 properties to help support those community gardens where we don't quite own the land. One of them is owned by the MTA, for example. And our role is very much for and with and by the gardeners. The organization was founded by a group of gardens that were kind of in the midst of basically a flash sale on community gardens that happened right in the 99-2000 era. Rudy Giuliani put 125 community gardens up for auction. You can buy it for any purpose, develop it however you want. And through an incredible amount of grassroots activism and people coming together in coalition, many of those gardens were saved. And many of those gardens that were saved in the land trust model. And so the beautiful thing about our organization is I, for example, I'm on the board of directors of the land trust. I had to be elected to that position by representatives from the gardens in the network. So we really strive to engage in as much self-determination as is possible across that system. And self-determination is something that for everyone I've heard tonight in this room here is denied to us in every other context. And so whenever we as a group or in our own practices, in our own partnerships, can create self-determination for ourselves and those who we work in solidarity with, that's it. That's one of the important steps to this kind of solidarity economy we're doing together. But another thing that's beautiful about our network and the kind of coalition work, coalition's a word I've been hearing a lot recently, and I kind of want to talk about it tonight with you all. Each of these gardens is its own garden. They all operate autonomously from this larger network we're a part of, but have the opportunity to engage interdependently with one another. And that's beautiful. We get to help preserve these spaces that would have been, captured by predatory capitalist structures otherwise, but that never ended. And I'm really hearing about like the small struggling nonprofits, talking about supply chains and learning about how supply chains work. Like these systems are still at our back. And the fact that we are persisting with creating new systems or with ones that exist is incredible. And we should absolutely be proud of that. And Cheryl's right, we got work to do still. We still have genuine partnership, true solidarity, coalition building. What does an organization or a way of coming together look like that could take on that $1 million, $10 million USDA grant that has the expertise in place, and we still are practicing self-determination together? Because like, I don't know what to do with 10, like we don't have the capacity for that either. But I dream of a New York where we could, but all of us do together. And again, it's easy to say that in the circle, but I'm really excited about the conversations that continue past this circle and in and out of other circles like this, where we also find action together in partnership. Because as the Brooklyn Queens Land Trust can show, like a decentralized but interdependent network of organizations with a shared set of values and missions can do a lot of wonderful things. Can they all, without any monetary resources, replace the capitalist food system? No, but if we come together and find our own resources and build those systems, there really is an opportunity here for all of us to really kind of answer this call and build food justice in our communities. Yeah. Thank you so much. Did you want a chance to?
But I do know, as a community gardener, one of my dreams is to, I'm sorry, I'm Chantal. I'm the Community Engagement and Partnerships Liaison for Bronx River Community Garden. I also, Cheryl, helped pickaxe and build new roots before I got injured. But I have been woofing around the world just as therapy from my job, or just using my downtime. But one of my goals is to create a pipeline from the community gardeners, the urban community gardeners, to the farmers. There was the Fresh Air Fund where kids would go to the country for the summer. Why couldn't we do that and have a sort of training center for farmers that kids say maybe they come home from college and they don't have anything to do, that they go back and, or community gardeners want a respite from the city. Why can't they have that exchange, that home away, by helping each other? And I think that will help sustain and perpetuate everything. And, child labor is great.
Yeah. Well, wait. I'm gonna do it. Amazing. So Jolie wants to say one more thing. I also want to just think about the second question that we had was about how involving community supports you to do this work. And I think you have already been talking about it and weaving that in. And so maybe what we want to ask as a closing, we have about 20 minutes left, is also, well, one comment and then the question. We want to remind you all that part of the reason why at CEANYC we're having these type of events, because it's not just to think about those collaborations, but actually the matchmaking that Maria was talking about. We want to think about the next step after this is like, what can we do to actually support you, to matchmake and do the accompaniment? What do you need to actually be able to have these collaborations? What do you need? How can we get Bernice that mentorship? How can we support for the pipeline, right? Like, these are the things that we want to actually make happen. And just putting that out there. So I will be following up with all of you. And then one of the things we want to ask is, what are you taking away either as knowledge, as a skill, or as a change in perspective as you're doing this? So feel free to add whatever kind of your last nuggets are, but try and think about that, and be ready to be pestered by us. And Nancy, I want to say, I appreciate that you claim that space, and I was trying to figure out how to facilitate, but you have done the work, and I'm glad you claimed that space that you deserve. So apologies for that, just trying to figure out. I'm gonna pass it then to Jolie to get it started with whatever comment, and then connect it to that.
Okay. So I had an idea while all of you were speaking, and I wrote it down in my phone. What do people feel about a food education cooperative? Essentially utilizing the members here and the members who are part of CEANYC for everyone's organization, and bringing in different people who are not necessarily part of the organization, but who are willing to provide education. And you can have this during key months in the year, like obviously spring and summer. Fall, winter, it's more organizing and more, and then the education will be dispersed. I have ideas like bringing in fellow chefs that I know. I'm a chef myself, and doing education in communities, even doing seed sharing, bringing relevance. Like I thought in certain neighborhoods, and like in East New York is like a Caribbean community, giving them soil and callaloo seeds so they can grow in their windowsill. And I think once you provide the education of, hey, I can grow things too, and then they see the value in growing and that they can do it themselves, and there's a sense of ownership, then there's a more of an idea that shifts into the community gardens. And what else can I do? I didn't start thinking about this stuff until I changed my diet and started eating more fresh food. And I was like, well, what else can I do? How else can I do it? So I think if there's a collaborative effort in terms of, or even if it's a Google Doc and a form and saying, hey, what do you think you can contribute? And what does your time look like? Bringing the kids into the gardens and doing those kinds of, or going into the schools. I know a farmer, his son did not want to be a farmer. They invited him into a think tank conversation. He didn't participate, he just listened. By the end of that think tank, he said, I'm going to take over your farm. And he's 18 years old. A lot of these kids have no idea where the food comes from. So if we can find ways to integrate and use some of the organizations, and like you said, Cheryl, we operate in silos, that is the biggest problem. We all feel alone because we operate alone versus operating in a capacity where we are sociable. My father's from West Africa. We are social people. We get into a circle and there's food, and we can have conversations for days, and we can move action and move mountains. And the only other thing I would say, I'm the co-founder of the Food and Wellness Equity Collective. We have over 300 content creators in the food and wellness space. If you have ideas on how to utilize that network, 20 of our founding members have a following of over 10 million people. To me, social media and using platforms like a TikTok, for as long as we may have it, is part of that conversation. And getting people love TikTok because it's a disseminator of information. Food is like the catalyst. You can say something like a bad thing about a company and it'll spread like wildfire. I think the same thing can happen in our space as long as we have the key talking points. And sharing those with people and say, hey, can you share about this? So we utilize the spaces where people are putting their attention, then I think they'll gravitate to it, and then they'll find us. Because there's only so much outreach we can do. We need people to come be interested in finding us and finding the spaces where they can fit in.
Yeah, I love those ideas, Yolanda. And I would just expand by saying, let's make sure, I mean, I think that's something that's needed and welcome. I think we've tried to organize, maybe in our boroughs, like the South Bronx the Bronx food hubs and all of that, but to make it more citywide, I think would be powerful. I think that we need to really be inclusive of immigrant voices, immigrant people, especially, and I will speak about Latinx people because those are my people, are contributing so much to this, food movement. They've, our farmers from Mexico and other parts of Central and South America have changed the way that we grow. But a lot of times their voices are not present in these conversations. So to make sure that that is inclusive and that their knowledge is not just, capitalized on, because, we're doing that unconsciously. So to make sure that we don't do that, and also families, that whole idea about passing on this information. A lot of times we create events and we create forums where it's people like us, but more forums where, even though childcare was offered, what are times that people might need, like if we do an all-day event at La Finca, or at New Roots or something, to make sure that we are inclusive of families and their needs. And the last thing I would say is really solidify partnerships with organizations like CEANYC, organizations like Green Guerrillas. I can't tell you how important it is to have alliances like that. We have a huge security problem at La Finca, over 35 break-ins since 2019, because we're in an industrial zone. We're not in anybody's little, between two buildings. Neighbors are not looking out. But anyway, Green Guerrillas was able to be the allies to speak, to bring the council person into the conversation. As a result, we now have fencing that has minimized this so much, so that we can go on with gathering community, growing food. And, we have nothing but much higher hopes because of that. So alliances, family, and inclusion of all voices is what I would say.
Okay. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Elizabeth Blanco y soy parte de una cooperativa de consultoría. No se trata de jardín comunitario ni de comida, pero es una rama que me está interesando mucho, porque con cine ya he visitado algunos jardines comunitarios haciendo labores, y también algo que me gusta mucho es que estoy pasando como en una transición de edad, de tamaño, y quisiera tener más conciencia de lo que voy a consumir. Pero algo que me llama la atención y creo que es un reto de todos es la necesidad de tener apoyo económico, porque lo conozco también en otros negocios cooperativos que he estado, que he compartido espacio, y todos siempre tenemos ese reto. Y algo que todos también necesitamos es la educación, que cada día se incentive en diferentes ramas, pero sobre todo en esto de los jardines comunitarios y la comida. Ha sido algo que es de gran impacto y muy importante para todos. Gracias.
You probably have said a lot that I agree with, but I turned off my translator. Sorry. What I will say, piggybacking off Nancy's point, I think people need to show up and support each other a lot more. Sure, for this event, probably like over 50 people RSVP'd, and then you probably get like 10 that showed up. You're like, what happened? And it's really hard. It's really hard to oh, that's amazing. Yeah, right. It's really hard to get the needle moving. Like Cheryl was saying, if people are not showing up. And recently at our annual meeting last week, we had Councilmember Krishnan, who's the chair of Parks and Rec Committee. And what he shared is that people need to show up. Y'all need to share your voices. You need to be able to tell your stories and let it be known and be heard. And until we show up and start sharing our stories and try to problem solve together, we're going to keep on having these conversations over and over again. And like Cheryl was saying, it's like, if my organization doesn't have the bandwidth to fiscal sponsor, can your organization do it? Because most organizations has the bandwidth, but we're not asking the right questions. We're just expecting for people to come and throw us a life raft, and it's not going to happen. So I think who's on Zoom, everyone that's here, I hope that from tonight forward, we're all showing up for each other and in an intentional way. And yes, our back hurts, we're tired, our joints are cracking. We have to show up. That's all I have to say.
Everyone turn to the right and make a circle for massage. I don't know. My head is all over the place. Because I'm also part of a community garden and compost project that we try to be kind of like a mini farm, like where our compost is going in straight into our garden. And yeah, all of what you have been talking about teaching and learning and like all the immigrants in our community that like come in and say, I haven't seen this plant since my country or whatever, like that we're growing there. And then the kids are learning how to, like, it's so important. And I was talking to Dee earlier before we started about like thinking about how can the land trust, maybe help us, because we're probably going to lose our lot this year or next year. But oh yeah, sorry, that's the 45th Street green space is what we call ourselves. Yeah, so it's a private lot. And we did a direct action during the pandemic to take it. And actually the landlord like negotiated with us and ended up saying, yeah, okay, I'll let you compost and garden here, because they weren't doing anything with it at the time, but now things are going to change. What's that? Oh, totally. Totally. Like it's actually, oh.
I said what you did was you elevate the worth of his lands. Of course, it's appealing to him now. You did the work. That's what I'm talking about. Doing the work for free.
Yeah.
And then they benefit.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's interesting. There's just like something that I have been thinking about is how people show up to that space all the time to work for free because they love it, because it makes us happy, because we're in community and we get to talk with each other about anything we want while we get our hands in the dirt, while we grow vegetables, while we share food together. So it's a really enriching experience, to be human together and like to steward land together. But somehow we need to be able to like own the land somehow. Money. I don't know. So yeah, keep connecting it's brewing. I don't know.
Before we continue, I just want to do a shout out. We have about 5 minutes, and I want to make sure we honor the workers that are here, our interpreters, our hosts. So as part of that, let's do a lightning for the folks that are left at 1 minute. Keep it tight. Support the workers.
1 minute. Okay. I don't really know what else to add. But I guess I'm leaving here thinking about what you, Chantal, were saying about how you've been woofing and like how nice it would be to get people out to the land and like to learn how to farm. And I'm thinking about how we are all working so hard and there's like rarely any time for rest or to be in nature. And yet we work with food. And you would think that we would be able to have more of that connection, but like I don't ever go outside. It feels like. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking about how can we also, as we're trying to build these new systems, like how do we make space for rest and like time to actually connect with nature and with each other without having to think about working.
1 minute. So one, Just Food has a community chef training program. We train community chefs. If you're interested, we have a live application going now, where over the next 3 years, our commitment is to train 50 community chefs. 2, Prime Produce and Wikimedia hosted an event here calling community gardeners to come talk about their gardens and put it on Wikimedia. And a lot of you didn't show up. And we're doing it again and again and again because community gardens need to document the work that they do, and it needs to be on Wikipedia or Wikimedia. Second, we talked about data collection. Without data collection, something that I'm very passionate about, we can't advocate for funding for our work if we can't prove what the impact of our work is. And finally, urban-rural connection is very important, and we have talked about this. okay, about bringing the urban to the rural and the rural to the urban and training community gardeners and farmers. We have been talking about this, and this is something that I want to do till I die. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I will echo all these things. I want to make our space available for all of you. We are very friendly and we have a lot of space, and I would love to host this upstate sometime. And yeah, and I'm just really excited about the new partnerships this year, and really excited to continue doing this work, which is amazing after 15 years and burnout, so it's like, it feels like a good year. And I really, really would love to work with you on this project. I think it sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And yes, working on these projects is the way to go. And I have come away with a lot tonight. Thank you, everyone. I'm particularly reflective about the ways that we're reconsidering our relationships to existing systems, trying to make new ones or survive in the ones that we're surviving in. And I'm really seeing and hearing the way that some of our spaces, like community gardens, we didn't talk about it much tonight, but they're also cultural spaces. They're also event spaces. They can learn from things like having live interpretation, feeding people when they show up is like just the way to do it, addressing trauma and building healing together on the land and with the land. But they can also be gateways to these other spaces and these other ways of life. How can a community garden excite you about the idea of learning more about that at a larger scale, and vice versa, is very interesting to me. So I love rethinking land with you all. I love rethinking these solidarity circles with you all, and getting out in the country.
I just love these circles and sharing community and brainstorming together. Together, obviously, we're stronger. And, regardless of our efforts, it starts with you. But as you intimated, the burnout is real. And, we have to learn. I work in the arts, and a lot of my clients, my job as a manager is to promote and protect them, right? But a lot of times it's promote and protect them from themselves. And so us supporting each other, I think will cut down the learning curve, and we could recognize, you might want to do this, or you might be careful about that. So I appreciate being here tonight. I appreciate all of you showing up, and look forward to us continuing to show up for each other and share. It's like it starts with you, but then there's two, right? All you have to do is one more than before. And, I'm looking forward to expanding the conversation and the network, brainstorming, and being supportive.
Thank you. What a beautiful way to end. Once again, I want to thank our space that has been hosting this whole series over the last 4 months, Prime Produce, and Algarabia Language Co-op. Amazing work. I want to thank all the people on the Zoom, and all of you who are here. I know your faces now. I've heard your dreams. I'm coming after you. And Maria's going to tell us about the CEANYC membership.
Yes, go ahead.
Application is in. Ruth just dropped it in the chat.
Yes, we got it. And you will all get an email with all the links, all the contacts, so that you can stay connected. But also, at CEANYC, the Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York City, all of you are already our members. We don't do this step of be our member. No, you're already our member. And what we do is support and connect. And basically, we just want you to affirm that you are a member of the Alliance. And this is what we do, right? It's about building relationships, connections. We also have a lot of political education workshops that can come to your organizations to support the work that you're doing. We tailor our workshops based on what is that you need to work on. We're working on building curriculum specifically for conflict resolution. That has been something that people want to work on a lot. We also are working a lot on like modules of teaching about democratic decision making based on the different structures that people have in their organizations. And we also have our annual cooperative leadership. We want to change the name a little bit, but it's a very intensive workshop that brings people from all the sectors of the solidarity economy to really dive in deeply into how do we grow the solidarity economy, but also just basically deepening the relationships. Some people that are here have joined that already. Cheryl, Rachel, Nancy is one of our peer educators. We also have that format of how to join us, be a peer educator with CEANYC, and this is what we do. So thank you so much. And I put this slide with the Yoda so that we remember that we're all Yodaing together. And thank you so much and enjoy the food. And we want to take a group picture if you don't mind before you leave. So let's gather in this side of the room to get a picture real quick if you don't mind. And we will send it to you. And thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, let's play some music. I put some links to music in the first slide so you can open it. Okay, so for the people in the Zoom, you can also join the picture. We will put you in gallery and you turn your camera on before we go. And we're set. So turn on your camera for those who are still in the Zoom, and you will be included in the picture. Let's get this to this side, in this side, to this side in the picture for here. We're gonna take it here, yeah. Thank you so much. Coming. Before our friends in Zoom leave, come this side. Yeah, so the Zoom people are gonna be in the back. Can you gather people? Can you gather? Yes, here. Yes, come. Exactly, love it.